Siren FM.
So I'm now joined by Stuart Miles, who's the editor of Pocket-Lint.com. Stuart, thanks for joining us.
That's all right.
And we're here to talk about Apple's announcements this week. So you've had the chance to try the announcements from Tuesday.
Yes, I was in San Jose at the Little More event, as they like to call it. Managed to get a quick sort of 10-minute play with the new device.
So a lot of people will know what the events are like from the live blogs, where you know that you wait outside for an hour and then you get updates every minute on what music's playing, but not so much on what happens afterwards. The event's done, you go to play with the device. Can you give us an idea of what that bit is like?
Yeah, sure. So we sit in the auditorium, we listen to Tim Cook talking away, and Phil Schiller comes on and talks to us a little bit, and you get played a video, and everybody, because it's in America, everybody whoops and claps and cheers, and it's all very rah-rah, so to speak. And then afterwards there's a rush to the door, and you're sort of attempting to get out of the auditorium first without missing anything, but then you also want to get to the devices first, because it's one thing about hearing about them, and then it's a second about actually playing with them and seeing and feeling for yourself whether you think it's going to be a great product or not. So there's normally a real rush to, in this case, 2 flights of stairs. You've got to be lean, fit, able, and
you wouldn't expect a tech event to be some sort of fitness test, then, would you?
No, I mean, it's very. If you sort of sat around and fancied having a chat and needed to go to the toilet, then you'd be scuppered for quite a while. So you then have to rush into the room. You have to grab one of the devices, and there were probably about 400 to 500 people, and I would say there was 15, maybe less, iPad minis to play with. So it's quite a rush to get to the device. There isn't much room in the device because it was held very much in a sort of traditional theatre, and so that was not really designed for a big room to be able to play with these things. And then you've got to not only play with it and see what you think, but then you have to take pictures. And taking pictures of shiny things in very poor lighting is very hard. And then you've then got the joy, if you call it that, of writing a couple of 100 words at least on what you think and trying to get your raw emotions of that moment out, so people at home waiting desperately for you to give your opinion can have some grasp of what your initial thoughts are.
So I suppose we should get to those initial thoughts, and we'll start with the sort of 7.9-inch iPad mini.
Yep.
What were you? Well, we knew a lot about the device going into the event. What were you
good
sort
old
of?
rumour stories.
Yeah. What were you expecting? To feel like when you would get your hands on it at first?
What did I expect, or what was I expecting? I suppose I was expecting it to be very similar to the iPad, and what actually happened and became was that it was considerably lighter than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
It was one of those feelings I had when I was there playing with the iPhone 5 for the first time. It looks very much like the iPhone 4S, and you think, oh, that's a bit disappointing. And then you pick it up and you think, actually, it's a lot lighter. And that was the same with the iPad mini. It's very light. It's very well made. It's got the same sort of anodized aluminium feel to it that the iPhone 5 has. And so, it was. And I was taking pictures of it. I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, my fingers have wrapped around both edges of this. So that shows you, that you can put it into one hand.
So there's sort of a nice element of pleasant surprise to it.
Yes, yeah. It's a very premium device. Having played with all of the tablets now that are on the market or about to hit the market, this felt like a premium device, and it felt very light. And I think if you're looking to use it for reading, and therefore holding it, on a train or something, I think that's very important.
Yeah. So, not to talk too much about the other tablets, but everyone bigged it up at first and thinking, competitor to the Nexus 7, the Amazon Kindle, but there seems to be more, actually, not for people who want a tablet, but if you want an iPad, it is a cheaper iPad, and it does everything you'd expect from an iPad without holding it back in a way?
Yes, I think that's fair. There are lots of competitive devices, and those in the 7-inch space, and most of them, in fact I think all of them, are considerably cheaper. But it's not about that. It's never about that with Apple, because you could look and say, well, I could get the iPad 3, now iPad 4, for £400, or I could go and buy a 10-inch tablet from ViewSonic, and it cost me £100. And one experience would be very good, and one experience wouldn't be very good at all. And I think Apple have sort of taken that approach, is you have to pay a premium for our device, for this sort of 8-inch tablet, but we'll promise that you get a good experience every time. And they've proven that with the iPad, in that it is more expensive than the competition, but, a lot of people use it.
Now, one of the things I've been trying to get my head around with the iPad mini, so it's got the same screen resolution as the iPad 1, the iPad 2,
Yes.
but the screen itself is physically smaller.
Yes.
Is the experience of pressing buttons, because everything on the screen will then just be a little bit smaller? Is
No.
it still feel fine?
It does. It's not a Retina display that
Yeah.
you get on the iPad 3, which is a bit of a disappointment. But in the same way that it's not an issue pressing icon buttons in the iPhone 5 or 4, it didn't, in the time that I had with it, I didn't suddenly think, oh my goodness, everything is a little bit too small for me to press here. It just seemed to merge between the usage of the iPhone 5 and the iPad. It just sort of sits in the middle somehow, and you sort of start using it, and then after you've used it for a couple of minutes, you think, oh, actually, maybe this is a tiny bit smaller, or, actually this device is a lot smaller.
So overall, good reaction for you, your first hands-on with the iPad
Yeah,
mini?
for my first 5 to 10 minutes of it, I thought it's a very nice device. I think it will become the de facto iPad of choice for many people, certainly looking to buy an iPad.
So there were a load of more announcements at the event. Which ones sort of caught your fancy? Which ones caught your eye?
I think the iPad mini was obviously the lead device. The iMac was very nice, although I have sort of gone beyond needing a desktop machine or a certain area of my house to use a computer. I'm sort of a lot more mobile than that. And the MacBook Air with Retina display, the MacBook Pro 13-inch with Retina display, the screen is lovely. I was at the launch of the 15-inch screen, and we all said how lovely that was from a crispness point of view. And the 13-inch takes that experience, but makes it in a more manageable size.
I
The
suppose...
15-inch is very large when you put it on your lap.
Yeah.
You sort of notice that, and the 13-inch isn't so overpowering.
Because I suppose with things like Retina, you go through most of the time thinking, no, everything looks fine. Then you pick up one of the devices with a high pixel density, and you just realise how nice everything looks. Not that things don't look bad, but it's just so much nicer, and to get that improvement.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it for your listeners is that it's the experience of, if you've gone round to someone's house and you've watched television and they have a subwoofer, until you listen to television with the subwoofer, television is fine, there's no issues, you're happy. And then you go around to a friend's house and watch a movie and there's a big explosion, you're like, I can hear the extra difference now. Damn you, I really need to go and get one of those myself. And I think that's very much the case with the Retina display that Apple have created. If you're using your MacBook at the moment, you'll be fine. If you're using a Windows device, you'll be fine. It's only when someone comes round and says, look at this, and you'll look at it, and then you'll go, and then you'll think, oh, that does look crisp, that's lovely, and then you'll go back to your computer and you'll start looking, and you'll realise that the fonts are slightly jagged, or the icons are slightly blurry, and you'll be like, this is annoying.
I've sort of found that with my phone, which is the HTC One S, and each time I put down my Nexus 7, pick up the phone, I go, ooh, the colours are vibrant. And you don't realise they're not as good elsewhere. You just think, ooh,
Exactly.
They do look nice.
Exactly, and that's the problem. So if you don't want to be tempted with a Retina display...
Stay away
anything
from
that
all your
Apple does,
friends.
Stay away from everything. Don't go into an Apple store.
That's probably the best way to keep yourself off. You just go in there and it's a bit like kids in the sort of sweet shop.
Yes, very much so.
Well, Stuart, thank you very much for chatting to us today.
No problems, thanks very much.
Cheers.
Siren 107.3 FM.